President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. Before giving the floor to lead co-lawyer for civil party to resume questioning, the chamber wishes to hear submission of parties in relation to defense counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia's request to admit document E319/23.4.1 under Internal Rule 87.4. On 7 March 2016, the defense counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia filed a list of documents which they wish to use during the hearing of 2 TCE 88. Among those documents, there is document E319/23/4.1, which is not admitted yet into the evidence. The defense for Mr. Nguyen Chia requests that that document should be admitted as evidence under Internal Rule 87.4. Therefore, the chamber is now hearing submission orally of parties in relation to the admissibility of that document. First, the chamber will give the floor to the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Chia to submit and address the chamber in relation to the request. You may now have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, very briefly, document E319/23.4.1 is the DC Cam statement of upcoming witness to TCW 840. It's a DC Cam statement of him and his wife. TCW 840 is a witness for O Konseng Security Center. As the trial chamber knows, he was initially scheduled to appear on Wednesday, 9 March. So at the time of filing the documents to be put before the expert, we realized, or we figured there was no need to have a special 87 request. However, the witness could not appear as scheduled due to health issues, but it is our understanding that he might come back if his health improves. Obviously, the content of his statement is relevant to the issues discussed in this case, since he was already called as a witness by the chamber. In addition, his statement is relevant to our position, and that is also the questions that we would like to put to the expert next week, because this witness in his DC Cam statement confirmed that indeed Sao Pim wanted to overthrow Pol Pot and the CPK since 1975. He also discusses the event of the assassination attempt against Pol Pot, which according to him was plotted by Sao Pim. Relevant ERNs for the record are 01079-524 in English and 01079-526 in English. Finally, in his DC Cam statement, this upcoming witness also stated that among 21 party central members, only 9 central committee members remained faithful. So for numerous reasons, his DC Cam statement is relevant, and the most obvious one is, of course, that it is a statement coming from the upcoming witness himself.
President, thank you. The floor is now given to the co-prosecutors to respond to the submission of Mr. Nguyen Chia defense team in relation to the request to admit document E319/23/4.1. You have the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I won't take issue at this time with the characterization of what this witness says in this interview. I have doubts as to how a witness who had nothing to do with the East Zone would be in any position to speak to Sao Pim plots. But this is a statement of a upcoming trial witness, and we have no objection to the admission of this document.
President, what about the lawyers for civil parties?
Pas d'objection, Monsieur le Président.
No objection, Mr. President.
And the defense team for Mr. Kilsompon, said the President.
Oui, Monsieur le Président, évidemment.
Yes, Mr. President. Quite obviously, there is no objection because it's a statement of a witness.
Thank you. The discussion of the request by the defense team for Mr. Nonchie is now concluded. The Chamber thank you for your submissions and responses. And these submissions and responses can be the basis for the Chamber to issue the decision on the request to admit that document in due course before hearing 2 TCE 88. And now the floor is given to lawyers for civil parties to resume questioning, and you will be given only 15 minutes the most.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, witness. I would like to carry on putting some questions to you regarding living conditions and detention conditions at case 17. This morning, you explained the circumstances under which you lived through the months of detention. I would like to put some follow-up questions to you. During the period of your detention, did you observe that some of the persons with whom you were detained fell sick? And if yes, what were the diseases that were rampant at K17 at the time?
Witness. Villagers during that time did not have any diseases for that entire month. That's all.
Nous avons entendu un témoin.
We heard a witness testify yesterday, Mr. Champel, who stated that he was also detained at the same time as you on the same floor, and he talked of skin diseases that appeared to be particularly rampant at the time. Did you observe the same? He spoke at 13 hours 42 yesterday.
Answer. Yes, Chan told you he was detained together with me. He said that detainees had skin diseases. I don't think they had skin diseases, but I may have forgotten that.
Je vous remercie. Vous nous avez.
Thank you. This morning, you told us that 5 of your children were detained with you. What can you tell us on the manner in which your children survived those months of detention. Do you have any particular memories regarding the detention of your 5 children who are aged between 2 and 18, that is 2 years and 18 years?
Answer. My 5 children were with me within the detention building. After 1 month, we were freed and allowed to work at work sites. 5 of them were detained with me in the same building as the parents. In fact, we were in different places.
Y avait-il beaucoup d'enfants à
Were there many children on the ground floor of K17 where you were detained for 1 month? And if yes, how old were the children who were with you? Your own children were aged between 2 years and 18 years. Were there many children in the detention facility, particularly young children on the ground floor where you were detained?
Answer. Children, yes, they were there, but not many. Some were younger than my 2-year-old baby. Not many of them were younger than my 2-year-old baby. I may have forgotten. Some may have been 1 year or 2 years old. 1 dozen of them, 4 to 10.
Avez-vous le souvenir si l'un quelconque de
Do you recall whether any of those children fell sick? And if yes, what can you tell us about that?
Answer. It seems that no. I may have forgotten, and I may not have looked around at that building. Within I may not have looked around inside the building.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. This morning you stated that after a month you were transferred to a labor camp. Can you describe to us the conditions or circumstances under which you left K17 and arrived in the labor camp? Were you escorted by guards? Were you taken there in a vehicle? And can you remember when you left K17?
Answer. I was removed from that detention center. I was taken away by the vehicle, and the vehicle was driven northwards. That included men and women. Perhaps 20 to 30 of us were sent to work sites. The Chinese-made vehicle. Sirika said the witness.
Y avait-il des gardes qui...
Were there any guards escorting you during the journey?
No. During the journey, no guards, and there was the leading cadres, but no security guards. Upon our arrival at the work sites, we were told about our rights, and we were prevented from going to the east of Koh Nhej, but we were allowed to go to the north of Koh Nhej. After the announcement, I at the time did not focus on, did not have the attention to work. I started to hate Koh Nhej from that time onwards.
Je vous remercie. Vous avez indiqué.
Thank you. You have stated that there were no guards during your trip in the Chinese vehicle, but you stated that there were senior cadres. That is what I heard in French. Can you confirm to us that senior cadres were present? And who were you referring to when you used the term senior cadres?
Ta Si was there on the same vehicle. He was considered the leading cadre. He was on the same vehicle at the time, and now I have heard that he is already deceased. I do not know others besides him at the time. He was on the same vehicle, leading all of us to the work sites and introduce. He was with us in order to introduce us to those at work sites.
Et ce sera donc ma dernière question.
This will be my last question to you, witness. I would like to understand whether Tan Si was the person who drove the vehicle that took you to the labor camp. Did I properly understand your answer?
Answer. The driver was there, and he was also there together with the driver, but he was the one who introduced us to those who were at the work sites.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur le témoin. Je n'ai plus de questions.
Thank you, Mr. Witness. I have no further questions for the witness, Mr. President.
President, thank you. The floor is now given to the defense teams for the accused, starting first from the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Chie to put questions to this witness. You have the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. I have a few questions that I would like to put to you this afternoon. This morning, you spoke about your sister, who was married to Naisaran alias Ya. When did your sister marry to Ya?
Answer. It was in 1968 in the forest. The wedding was organized by others, not by parents. Angka was the one who organized such a wedding. From my recollection, it was in 1968.
And was it in 1968 that you met for the first time Ya, or had you known Ya already before that?
Only after that time did I saw him. I had never known him before, or I had never seen him before.
Can you tell us how often you had contact with Ya between 1968 and September 76 when he was arrested?
Answer: I did not contact him regularly. I met him once in Turkok in Phnom Penh, and then on another occasion in Karachi. 2 times. I met him 2 times, and after that I went back to Koh Nhē.
Did you meet him also in Mondulkiri? Did you speak to him in Mondulkiri?
Answer: oh yeah, he went to Mondulkiri once, and that was close to Koh Nhē, and currently it's now Koh Nhē, the location I'm in. He was there once, and that location was known as Phum Obrum Kraum at that time, and it was the place that I saw him as well at the time, and after that 3 times I had never seen him.
Have you ever seen Ya together with Kun, also known as Tuch, also known as Koi Tun, the Secretary of the North Zone?
Regarding Koi Tun, when he visited the northeast, his name was known as Kun. He made regular visits through the forest, and after the liberation in 1970, said the witness, his name was changed to Tuch, Koi Tun, Tuch rather. I heard he was in charge of the North Zone. That is all I know. But I myself, I personally did not see him from 1970. But before 1970, I had seen him since he made regular visits to the upper level of the country and back to the lower level of the lower part of the country. So he made regular visits to the upper land and the lower land. And after 1970, I had never seen him.
Do you know what the relationship was between Koi Tun and Ya? Were they close together? Is there anything that you can tell us about the relationship between those two?
Answer: I do not know about that, since I was in a different location and he was in another location.
Do you know whether Koi Tun was arrested before or after Ya was arrested?
From the situation that I have grasped, Koi Tun had been arrested first before Ya. Koi Tun arrest happened in 1976, and Ya's arrest may have happened in 1977. It is my estimate. Perhaps Ya may have been arrested in late 1977 or earlier than that. But I recall that Koi Tun had been arrested first.
Have you ever heard, either during the DK regime or afterwards, the accusation that Ya had at one point in time ordered Koi Tun to poison both Pol Pot and Nuon Chea?
សាកថ្លៃមកអត់ឆ្លើយតប
President, please hold on. Mr. Witness, you have the floor now, International Deputy Co-Prosecutor.
Yes, our objection is that this is a leading question. If counsel is basing this claim on some piece of evidence that is other than an S-21 confession, he can use that, I guess, to confront the witness, but he shouldn't be leading the witness on this issue.
I'm not sure where the leading element comes in, Mr. President, but I'm happy to rephrase. Have you ever heard anything, Mr. Witness, about plans of both Koitun and Ya, whom you knew well, to kill the Secretary of the CPK and the Deputy Secretary of the CPK? And my knowledge, my source for this information, Mr. President, is not a confession, but the black paper.
Answer: I am not aware of that issue. They were in Karachi, lower part of the country, and I was in Mundulgiri, away from that Karachi.
Sorry, Counsel, just to have a record, a complete record, can you give us the number of the source?
The black paper, Judge Fence, that is E3/266. I have the English ERN for you now only. That is 000822542. Let me move on now, Mr. Witness, to some other people that Ya might have been close with. Have you ever...
President, please hold on. Judge Lavens, you have the floor first.
Counsel Koppe, could you tell us if the Black Book provides a source regarding a possible project that Pol Pot and his deputy might have developed?
They don't mention any specific sources. But it doesn't, of course, mean that it is not correct. Let me, like I said, move on, Mr. Witness, to the connections between Ya, your brother-in-law, and others. What was Ya's relation to Tiv Ol?
I did not know about that. I did not know if they had any relation.
But it is correct that you knew Tiv Ol. Is that correct?
Yes, I knew him.
Do you know whether there was any relation between Ya and Chuk or Chan Chakrai?
I did not know this Chan Chakrai person. I knew Tiv Ol, as I stated earlier.
Have you ever heard of someone called Q Mas? Q Muse?
No. The name does not ring a bell.
I will get back to them shortly. One last question as to possible relationships between Ya and others. Do you know if there was any relationship between Ya and Sao Pim?
No, I did not. I never saw Sapam. He was in a senior position and I was so far from him.
All right, let's move on to the next subject, Mr. Witness, and that is the killing or the murder of Ham. You weren't asked any questions this morning, but I'm going to ask you a few questions. What is it that you know about Ham's death? Who is responsible, in your recollection, for Ham's death?
I did not know this person, Ham, you mentioned.
It might be my pronunciation, Ham, also known as Lang, Taham, who was killed in 1977. What is it that you can tell us about the death of Taham?
I did not witness the event. I only heard the people speaking about it, that Ham and Kampoon killed each other. But this is just a rumor that I heard from others, that these two killed each other in Phnom Penh.
Have you heard at one point in time that Kampoon murdered Ham with a piece or an iron piece coming from a car that he hit?
That's what I heard, yes. But I do not know whether that actually happened, because I did not see it.
Have you heard whether subsequently Kampoon was either killed by others or committed suicide?
No. I did not know whether he actually killed himself or he was killed by other people.
To DC Chem, you stated that both Ham and Kampoon had absolute trust in each other. They were like brothers. Why did you say that? What is the source of your information? Was that something that you observed yourself?
President of Witness, please hold on. Then, and the Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just ask that counsel provide us with the year-end references when he's going to use the DC Cam interview, so we can make sure, unlike yesterday, it's not coming from the section of the interview where he's simply reading the S21 confession.
No problem, Mr. President. Up only now the English ERN, that is 003841116, where the question is from the investigator, how intimate was their relationship? And the witness answers, they were working together just like brothers and sisters. What happened after that? And then the witness answers, they had absolute trust in each other. So this is clearly coming from the witness. So my question again, Mr. Witness, what is the source of this statement that you gave? Why did you say they were like brothers and had absolute trust in each other?
Yes, they liked each other and they worked together, and that is true, and that's from what I actually observed. And they treated each other as brothers, and actually they were related. So I could not make out of what happened after the event of the killing.
Well, that was exactly going to be my next question. Have you heard anything as to the reason why Kampoon killed Ham with an iron bar from a car, or with an iron bar? Why did he do that?
I did not know about the reason for the killing, because I only heard that they killed each other in Phnom Penh while I was in Mundulkiri, that is in Konya, to be precise. I cannot tell you the reasons they killed each other.
This morning, Mr. Witness, answering a question from the prosecution, you said, quote unquote, that you were subordinate of Kampoon. What made you say that you, 75, 76, 77, you were subordinate to Kampoon?
Because I worked under his direction or instruction, and he provided me with training and leadership, and that later on appointed me in a junior leadership on the ground, and that's what happened.
And as I understand from your testimony this morning, you also had some form of family relationship, or at least your wife had. Is it correct that if I say that your wife was the aunt of his wife?
Yes. In fact, Kampoon's wife was the aunt of my wife, and that's what I said this morning.
If I would use that term, would it be fair to say that you were in Kampoon's network?
President, witness, please hold on, and the deputy co-prosecutor, you have the floor.
I would ask counsel just to explain what he means by that term. That term is a pretty charged one that had a certain meaning during the Khmer Rouge period, so I think he should be very clear what it is that he's asking the witness.
I know it has a certain meaning. I did not use the word string, which is, I think, the most commonly used word, but I believe the word network is reasonably neutral, so I should be able to ask him that question. If it's no, it's fine. If he can confirm it, I think I should be able to ask that question.
President, the objection by the Deputy Co-Prosecutor is sustained since the term network has several connotations. For that reason, the Chamber instructs the witness not to respond to the last question by the defense team for Nuon Chea.
Fine. Mr. President, at one point in time in your DC Chem statement, and it might be a mistranslation, it is English page 00384111. You referred to harm as harm, or in English, the contemptible harm. Is that something you said? Was harm in your view harm, the contemptible harm?
No, I did not say something like that. But maybe that is what is stated in that document. I never called him by that phrase. And this is not what I said. And that is the truth.
No problem. Maybe there was a translation issue in that DC Chem statement. Let me move on now to another subject which was discussed this morning, and that is the three categories that you mentioned. The categories of people in one form or the other committing treason. You said that you received or that you read a circular. But did you also see similar categories in a magazine called The Revolutionary Flag?
I only saw that document, and I was instructed to disseminate that information at the hospital. That is to those youth male and female combatant at the hospital. And the document mentions these categories, and that's the source of my knowledge. That is, I learned from that document. But I cannot tell you the criteria for each of the three categories. And then I was arrested, then I thought of the three categories of the enemies.
We don't have a copy of that circular anymore that you refer to, but let me see if I can assist you by refreshing your memory by reading an excerpt from a document E3/13. That is a document containing, Mr. President, the minutes of a meeting of secretaries and deputy secretaries of divisions and independent regiments, dated 9 October 1976. And I particularly refer to English ERN 009-40354, French 00344-983, and Khmer 00052-413 until 14. So, Ms. Witness, you don't own this document, but I'm going to be reading it to you and then ask you if the formulation of these three categories somehow refreshes your memory. Operational methods. 1. continuous education is imperative. 2. It is imperative to purge no good elements absolutely in the sense of an absolute class struggle. The purge is premised on 3 principles. Category 1, the dangerous category. They must be absolutely purged. Category 2, the ordinary liberal category. They must be educated again and again in our education schools. Category 3, the category of those who have merely been incited by the enemy, merely believing in the enemy incitement. As a first step, they should undergo refashioning to get them to no longer believe the enemy. End of quote. Is this something that you might have read in that circular as well, that you referred to this morning?
I can only recall what I have stated regarding the 3 categories, and I do not recall any other specific parts. As a matter of fact, it happened many years ago. I recall the 3 categories of the enemy. That is the first one to be killed, second one to be detained, and the third one to be sent to the cooperatives. And besides this, I cannot recall anything else. And this happened in 1976.
Would it be fair to say that you were probably seen as a category 2 person?
Yes.
Let me move to the next subject, Mr. Witness, and that is 2 persons that you referred to also this morning, Svai and his wife Boli, and Kasi.
Her name is Boli Sitong. She's the wife of Svai. President, witness, please listen to the completion of the question first before you respond. And also, it is not appropriate for you to speak when the phone is not operational. You need to respond only when you were asked.
Mr. Witness, you yourself, I believe, I'm quoting you correctly, you have been accused of having a Vietnamese connection. Do you know what Svai and his wife Boli and or Kasi have been accused of? Why were they either arrested or killed or escaped? Do you know that?
Regarding Svai and his wife, they were accused of having a connection with Vietnam, and Svai tried to abscond the arrest. But the wife, Bulisitong, was arrested as a result.
Please go ahead.
What else you want me to say?
This is the accusation that you might have heard of. Do you know whether Buli and her husband were really involved in working closely together with Vietnam?
I did not know about that.
Do you know whether any of those three people were involved in bringing Vietnamese military into the territory of Democratic Cambodia?
No, I did not know anything about that.
Do you know whether they were in any way involved in
President Council Copper, please give us the reference in your question. You need to give us the document number as well as the relevant ERNs, and you used to oppose the other side for asking questions without citing the reference, and I think you need to apply that to your questioning as well.
I was under the impression that I first have to ask open questions and then I can refer to the document, because I will. And no, Judge Lavergne, I'm not referring to any confessions. I'm referring, if you want to know, to E3/7960. Every question that I'm having is related to E3/7960, which is the summary of DC Cam statements.
If you have a proper reference, yes, you may continue.
I was asking you, Mr. Witness, just before, whether you know anything about Vietnamese military being brought into DK territory. Have you heard any information as to the involvement of those three people in a rebellion movement, also sometimes referred to as the Kampoon movement?
President Witness, please hold on, and Deputy Co-Prosecutor, you have the floor.
I don't have any objection to the first part of the question, but for the characterization of something as the Kampoon movement, I don't think counsel should be introducing that himself. He should be asking the question witnesses. If there are admissible documents he can later confront, but I don't think counsel should be testifying and characterizing himself.
I'm not characterizing, Mr. President. I am actually citing from a DC Cam statement. I'm happy to refer you to it. Page 30 in English of E3/7960, English ERN 00450295, French 00738999, and Khmer 0085.
Council Copper, please give the number of the document as well as the relevant ERNs, and please do it slowly.
It's on the case file, Mr. President. It's E3/7960, English pages 30 and 31, ERN English 0045 0295 and 296, French 0073899, and Khmer 008516666. There the witness refers to the rebellion movement. And further up, reference is made to the Kampun movement. So, Mr. Witness, although I've been interrupted quite a bit, I hope you still remember what I said. Have you ever heard of rebellion movements led by Kampun? Have you ever heard of Vietnamese military being secretly brought into territory of Democratic Kampuchea?
No, I did not hear anything about that.
Let me see if I...
If I knew it, I would say it, but I did not.
Let me try to be a little more specific. I'm now turning to that same document, E3/7960, Mr. President. Page 15 in English, ERN is 004502880, Khmer 00851637, and French 007638882. This witness says the following. Bu Ly has always been a medical person. The relations to Vietnamese was like that mentioned earlier. Her husband, Svai, really acted like that with the network, which was followed up to the border. He was the one who brought the Vietnamese to secretly operate in the province. The reason of arresting the wife, because the husband was shooting people. End of quote. Is this something, it's a little bit more detailed, Mr. Witness, is this something that you've heard of or that you have any knowledge of?
No, I did not hear that. What I knew was that Svai fled, and at some point he secretly returned with a handgun. And first he came to my area, and Svai actually was fixing a machine, and then my combatant came to the area and he was fired upon by Svai, and then that combatant came to tell me about that. And at other point he went to a garage and opened fire at the people there, and somehow he fled to the forest, and later on I heard that he hanged himself and died. But I did not see him bringing any Vietnamese troops into the area.
Let me read another excerpt from another witness. That's the same DC Cam document, Mr. President. It's English page 30, English ERN 004502995, French 0073898 and 99, Khmer 00851665 and 66. Since early 1977, I served Region Military Battalion 52 until the Vietnamese liberation. In 1977, there were Vietnamese attacks. It was the Vietnamese who started the attacks first. We had been prepared since the Cam Pum movement, but guns were in the warehouse, but carried. In about late 76 and early 77, Cam Pun and Svai were arrested for an alleged plot with the Vietnamese. Cam Pun brought Vietnamese in through Svai. Svai was a Jarai ethnic. The Vietnamese were secretly kept near the village. They had the so-called struggle. It's another formulation of pretty much the same events. Can you give a reaction to this excerpt that I just read to you, Mr. Witness?
President, please hold on. Mr. Witness, you have the floor now. International Deputy Co-Prosecutor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want the record to be clear. Counsel is characterizing this again somewhat. He should be just reading quotes, but the first quote he read had to do with, apparently seems to have to do with the locals fighting against the Vietnamese. The second quote is the witness describing the allegations against these people. He's certainly entitled to put this to the witness, but I don't think he should be characterizing what this proves.
I do not agree, Mr. President, with this objection, because I think it's clearly that this witness is being very specific as to what the Cam Pun movement was all about. As a matter of fact, his unit was instructed to fight what he called the Cam Pun movement, or in other words, the rebellion, because a little further down in that same statement he says, when Cam Pun and Ham died, battalion or regiment commanders in Co Nek were disarmed, Vietnamese left, my unit only was armed to suppress the rebellion movement. So I don't think that this witness is just merely saying what an accusation might have been, but is in fact someone who knew that the Cam Pun movement, as he calls it, was actively engaged in working with DK's biggest enemy, Vietnam.
The way I understand it, we have a clarification on the record, not an objection. Yeah?
Yes, I just think he should stick to the quotes and not characterize, because, again, I disagree entirely with the characterization he's giving her, and I'm reading this. It says nothing of the sort.
I wasn't characterizing. I was quoting literally, Mr. President, from this statement. So again, Mr. Witness, having heard this excerpt from this witness statement, can you give a reaction as to the activities of this rebellion movement and its working together with Vietnam?
Answer. I did not see that happening. No Cam Pun movement took place during the time. I was located in a nearby location close to Co Nhe, and the Vietnamese trooper came into the area, but I did not know about the Vietnamese entering into the area, and also about the Cam Pun movement. I have never seen that and known of this issue.
Well, let me see if that is entirely correct. Mr. Witness, the interviewer of DC Cam talked to you quite lengthily, and he has put to you a confession, the content of which we're not allowed to discuss with you. However, independently of that confession, you did say something to DCCAM which I would like to read to you. I'll be slowly so that you can see that whatever I'm reading is between brackets and is in fact the witness's statement. It is E3/7696, English ERN 00384-186, Khmer 00231-565, French 00384-289. On the bottom of the English page you say, Mr. Witness, yes, all weapons were collected, but Kampun might have some weapons hidden in...
Hold on, counsel. You have the floor now. You have the floor now, International Deputy Co-Prosecutor.
Yes, Mr. President, we object to counsel using this part of the DCCAM interview. If you look at this, the third day of his DCCAM interview, which starts at English 00384-164, Khmer 00231-543, and French 00384-268. This entire part of this interview is the witness reading a confession and the S21 confession of Chun, Pan Khon alias Chun, and occasionally making comments about the content of the confession. This entire question and answer part is inadmissible under the court's rules. I could not question a witness in this court by taking an S21 confession, reading it, and then asking the witness whether that is true. And it is also very unclear in here what exactly the witness is speaking to. Whether he's confirming the accuracy of events, of people. It is simply impossible to extract from this part of his interview admissible evidence. Counsel is not precluded from asking these questions himself to the witness, but I think he is precluded from using this part of the interview that clearly is derived from the witness reading an inadmissible S21 confession and then being asked questions about that inadmissible S21 confession.
Mr. President, I disagree. Apart from many attempts to sabotage my questioning, I've hardly been able to ask any question. I think I'm entitled to ask this particular question because I've asked him open questions based on DCCAM statements of other witnesses. Then he said, I do not know. However, it is clearly from the record of this DCCAM interview that he is presenting his own knowledge, and he is here saying Kampun might have some weapons hidden in order that his forces could take them. So he is offering his own knowledge. Triggered, I agree with reading that confession, but it doesn't necessarily mean that him offering his own knowledge should be inadmissible, or that I cannot ask a question about that.
Just to be brief, you simply cannot tell here whether the witness has his own knowledge about this or whether they are just engaged in a discussion about the content of this S21 confession. So he can ask open questions, but it is simply impermissible to be using statements that immediately follow, literally within one question, having read an excerpt from the S21 confession to the same effect.
It is, prosecution is clearly misstating the record, Mr. President. It's Dara from DC Cam who's asking about betrayal, about weapon collection, and then this Dara says, weapon collection began, who ordered to do it? And then the witness says, Hum. And then Dara says, Hum. And then the witness says, yes, all weapons were collected, but Kampun might have some weapons hidden in order that his forces could take them. That is perfectly admissible evidence, and I think the witness should be able to respond to my question.
This is a perfect example because what he just read from was actually when the witness went back to the S-21 confession. You can go to the S-21 confession and see these references. So counsel should not be using this. It was shameful yesterday when he tried to slip this in underhanded without notifying the court what he was doing. But this part of the interview is all based on an inadmissible S-21 confession.
President, now the issue is deferred for a while. It is now a short break time. So we will take the chamber will take a short break, and the court observer please assist the witness during the break time, and please invite him back into the courtroom at 3 p.m. The court is now in recess.